Hi, my name is Abigail Downing, and I am an adjunct professor at Gordon College, and I'm here to talk about peer feedback with student writing with all of you. So, when we're thinking about writing at Gordon with the undergrad students, we use the book The Writing Revolution and now The Writing Revolution 2.0, the more updated version. And it's a great starting place for thinking about writing. It's wonderful that it's not a curriculum, it's an approach to teaching writing that they could use with whatever curriculum they encounter as teachers. In the graduate program, we use a lot more of the writing rope, and it talks about, all the strands that need to come together to create a skilled writer. And we do talk about the writing rope a lot in the undergraduate program, even though the book is not a required textbook. They are aware that it is a great text that they can purchase, but we do talk about it a lot and the components of it throughout the course. So when we're thinking about the writing process and peer feedback, we want to think about where does it fit in. So we know with the writing process, right away at the beginning, we want to give students a model and a rubric so they know where they're headed. And then students can start to think and gather information. Then they're going to plan and organize for their writing. And this is one place where peer and teacher feedback can come into play. So they can look at their drafts, well, not their drafts, their plan, their outline, and they can give feedback based on that before they jump into writing a draft. And then definitely in the revising and editing stages is a time where they can meet with a peer and use one of these structured activities to give each other feedback on their writing. When we're thinking about peer feedback, it reminds me of this story by Mark Brown, Arthur Writes a Story. In the story, Arthur has a homework assignment where he needs to just write a story, and he decides to write about how he got his dog Pal. But then throughout the book, he shares the story with his sister, and then his parents, and his grandparents, and his friends, and everyone has some ideas about how he could fix his story, and he puts them all in. And by the end of the book, the story he wrote is completely outlandish and doesn't make any sense, and he realizes he should have just stuck with his original story to begin with. And I think this is a really good example of poor peer feedback, and is a good, talking point about how it can be done better and done effectively. Because we know that writing does improve with feedback, whether someone is giving feedback or receiving it, or, doing both in the case of peer feedback, because it makes them more aware of what are the qualities of good writing, especially comparing it to the criteria provided by the teacher that they're looking for. And it helps them look at their own writing with a more critical eye because they're used to evaluating it in that way. But we know that feedback needs to be specific. That's the whole problem in Arthur Writes a Story. It's not specific. They're just saying whatever they feel, whatever they think is best. So when we are doing this with students, we need to also train, future teachers that they have to provide their students with specific criteria to look for. Because also this can help with limiting or extending the feedback that students give each other. Because some students might have so many things they would want to change about the story that it's almost unrecognizable. It's like they're rewriting it. So we need to limit those students because it's not their writing, they're giving feedback to help that student improve what they wrote. And then also, other students might say, I don't know what to say. I don't know. It seems fine. So, having specific criteria that they're looking for based off of the rubric that you're using to evaluate writing is a great way to help those students think of something to say. They can acknowledge, oh, they did these things well because I can see from the criteria from the teacher that this is what our writing should include. Or they could say, oh, I see that something is missing. This is a suggestion I could give to someone that would help improve their writing. So we want to make sure that what they're sharing is positive and constructive feedback. We always want to have both. So whatever feedback strategy you use with students, we want to make sure, these future teachers, they know they have to model the feedback strategy. We can't just give it to them and expect it to go well. We need to model it first and show how it works. And with modeling the feedback strategy, we also have to model and help them practice speaking to each other with kindness while giving feedback. Writing, especially, can feel like such a vulnerable thing. Like it's your inner thoughts coming out. And so we want to make sure that we talk about how important it is to be kind. And one way to do that is with this THINK acronym. So is it true? Is it helpful? Is it insightful? Is it necessary? Is it kind? So a non-example might be you read someone's work and at the end you just say, it was boring, didn't like it. It's like, well, is that really helpful? Not really, because it's not giving them an idea of what they could change to fix. What was it about it that you thought was boring? And also, a word like boring, not very kind. So we can show those non-examples and then also show how, especially using the criteria we give them, it's a lot easier to give feedback that is helpful, that is necessary because they might be missing something important, and it's easier to be kind. So, also thinking about this speaking to each other with kindness, creating a supportive writing environment with a growth mindset is so important. So, knowing that even professional writers write draft after draft after draft and get so much feedback from their peers that helps them become better writers. And so, having something to fix about your writing does not mean you're a failure or that you're a terrible writer. It's true for everyone. Everyone edits, revises, takes in feedback from others to make their writing the best it can possibly be. But we have to keep in mind that students may have had some negative experiences in the past with this. So, explicitly teaching how to do it in a kind and respectful, polite way through a structured routine is going to make this a meaningful experience for students. So we're just going to talk about a couple quick strategies that you could do with students and you can teach future teachers to use as well. So a praise and a push, tag, respond, reflect, review, and then peer feedback checklists. A lot of these are very quick. A praise and a push is essentially what the title says. So you could do this with sticky notes and you could have two different colors. One for a praise that you'd like to give the writing, something that you liked about it, especially based off the criteria, and a push, something that they could do to extend their writing. So one example could be maybe you're talking about specific details in stories and making them more descriptive. So they could say, I liked that they ate strawberries. I love strawberries. But a push could be you could try to add more details about how the strawberries tasted. And that could even be a jumping off point for a discussion. Here are some examples from students. So these were from very young writers. And so they talked a lot about the illustrations that they included and how that was a highlight for them. That was a praise. And for some students, especially younger students who are putting a lot of time into their illustrations, this can really mean a lot to them. And it's easier to hear the push when you also have praise, right? Tag is similar but has a little bit more structure to it. So T stands for tell something you like, A, ask a question, G, give a suggestion. So it's taking the praise and the push and adding on another element of asking a question about something. So there's a piece about clarifying. Maybe there was part of the writing that didn't make sense. Respond, reflect, review is a similar process but has some motion to it. So all students have an opportunity to respond to a prompt. This could be a longer response. Maybe they're working on a longer piece of writing over a few days, or it could be something quick in the moment where they're writing a couple sentences down. Then they will move seats. So maybe everybody just moves a seat to the left and you read that student's writing and you reflect on something that they could improve. Then everybody moves one more time, you read another piece of writing, and you respond with a positive affirmation or praise. And then after that, all students go back to their original seat and they're able to see the thoughts from two different students who read their writing. And so that's the review. Review what was shared on your own writing at the end. Now, the peer feedback checklist is a lot more structured than the other options, requires a lot more planning and preparation from the teacher, and you can see how it can be specifically aligned with a rubric or a student-friendly checklist that they're looking for. So these are two examples. They are from Keys to Literacy, so where Joan Sedita is also works and writes, and she's the author of The Writing Rope, so we can see these connections. So the example on the left, is for younger students, but you can see how they take the different parts of a paragraph and make it visual through color coding and marking the writing. And that's how they can be checking that all the components are there and giving feedback to one another. So it's for informational writing. So you can see, find the introduction, underline it in blue. If you can't find it, ask your partner. Maybe they can show it to you because you might have missed it. Or that could be the partner realizing, oh, I don't have that. I'm going to add it. Find the facts, definitions, or details, underline it in a different color. And if it's not there, once again, talk to your partner about it. Find these words. Maybe it's specific vocabulary words they needed to use. If this was, within a specific content area, could be transition words. So that's something that would need to be written out. And you would circle the words in yellow. And if they're missing, let your partner know. And then finally, at the end, is it clear? Is the writing clear? The one on the right has even more specific pieces to it, and we're going to take a look at this one all together. So here's an example of student writing that a peer could be giving feedback on. This is opinion writing, so the parts of the checklist are a little bit different. But first, let's just read what the student wrote. So the title, to eliminate homework. I do not like homework because I do not want to check it. It is boring. We always do work at school. When I am playing at home, it interrupts me, and I just don't like it. The end. Definitely a very clear opinion here. So, to start off this peer feedback checklist, it's just ask what I like about this writing. And so, what I said for this writing is I like this writing piece because I agree with this opinion and I think he has good reasons. I think they're strong and they're clear. And yeah, I agree with a lot of these things. I think I felt similarly about homework sometimes. So now to get into more specific feedback, there's yes or no questions, but you can see there's ways to make it visual and there's actions to take. So is there an introduction that states the topic? This is a younger student, so they don't have, a formal introduction paragraph, but in the title, they introduce the topic. So I said yes and underlined that the topic is homework. Is the opinion stated? Yes. So I'm going to underline the opinion. I do not like homework. Are reasons presented? Yes. So I'm going to put an R at the start of every reason. So there was about checking it. I don't want to check it. It's boring. Doing work at school interrupts me, and then just not liking it. So there's 5 different reasons there. The next question says, is it easy to understand how the reasons support the opinion? And I said yes, all of those are very negative reasons. So they all support not liking homework and wanting to get rid of it. Are the sentences complete? Most of the sentences are complete, but I also said no because there are 2 sentences that are not complete. So I'm going to write the letter S at the start of those sentences. So because I do not want to check it, and I just don't like it. So the student would need to go back and edit those sentences to make them complete. Were interesting words used? I said yes. And so I put a star above the word eliminate because they could have just said get rid of homework or homework is bad, right? But they chose to eliminate homework. That's a really strong verb and really specific. And I also put a star over interrupts me because I think they could just say, it bugs me. They could have been a lot more vague, but interrupts me, I think, is a really specific verb for what happens when, you're in the middle of playing something and then you suddenly have to do your homework. Were transition words used? So no. So this is somewhere where it says, they could add some transitions. I think as the peer, that's something I could also try to do, or the teacher could say, the original author of this writing needs to go back and add some transitions. Is there a conclusion? Also no. So something that the original author needs to go back and add. There's a spot where teachers could add other criteria that they're looking for with this writing, and then the peer can also give some additional comments or suggestions. So I just added, you could add a reason about something good you could do instead of homework, like play outside. He does talk about playing, but a lot of this is just about, I don't know, sounds almost like complaints, but maybe it would be convincing to have, an argument or a reason, I guess, saying, if I didn't do homework, I could spend all this time, outside getting fresh air, and those kinds of things. So, just a suggestion, not something the author necessarily has to take, but something else to think about. So those are some strategies that, we work with our college students as they're getting ready to be teachers, to use with their future students to provide peer feedback with student writing.